A new diplomatic rift is emerging between Israel and some of its closest Western partners. 7 Western nations have jointly condemned Israel's decision to move ahead with construction tenders for the controversial E-1 settlement project in the occupied West Bank. The group includes the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Canada, and Norway. Together, they have called the move unacceptable, warning that the project could further undermine prospects for a future two-state solution. At the center of the dispute is the E-1 corridor. The area lies east of Jerusalem, between East Jerusalem and the major Israeli settlement of Ma'ale Adumim. E-1 covers roughly 12 square kilometers and has been one of the most sensitive areas in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for decades. The reason is geography. E-1 sits at a strategic point connecting Jerusalem with Ma'ale Adumim and sits between the northern and southern parts of the West Bank. Critics of the project argue that extensive Israeli construction in this corridor could make movement between Palestinian population centers more difficult and further fragment the territory. That is why Western governments say E-1 could threaten the territorial continuity needed for a viable Palestinian state. For Palestinians, the West Bank is a central part of their aspirations for an independent state, alongside Gaza, with East Jerusalem generally envisaged as its capital. Israel, meanwhile, considers Jerusalem its capital and maintains that the city should remain under Israeli sovereignty. The status of Jerusalem remains one of the most difficult issues in any future peace agreement, and E-1 sits directly within that larger dispute. The controversy also has a legal dimension. The United Nations Security Council has repeatedly addressed Israeli settlements in territory captured during the 1967 war. Resolution 2334, adopted in 2016, states that Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, have no legal validity under international law and calls for settlement activity to cease. Israel rejects that characterization and disputes the international legal consensus surrounding the settlements. Israeli officials and supporters of the settlement movement argue that Jews have historical and national claims to the West Bank and refer to the territory by its biblical and historical names. But internationally, settlement expansion remains one of the most contentious issues in the conflict, and E-1 is hardly a new issue. Previous Israeli plans to develop the area have triggered strong objections from European governments and the United States. Construction proposals have repeatedly raised concerns that development could make a negotiated territorial division increasingly difficult. Now, Israel's government has revived the issue. The publication of new construction tenders could allow companies to compete for work linked to further development in the area. And this time, the Western response has been unusually direct. The 7 governments have not only criticized the Israeli decision, they have also urged private companies to stay away from the tenders. That puts potential contractors under additional legal, diplomatic, and reputational pressure. The Western governments are calling on Israel to withdraw the tenders and halt further settlement expansion across the West Bank. Their warning comes against the backdrop of worsening conditions across the territory. The West Bank has experienced increasing settler-related violence and growing tensions involving Israeli forces, Palestinian communities, and armed groups. At the same time, Palestinian communities are facing serious economic pressures, including restrictions on movement and access to land and livelihoods. For Western governments, the concern is that continued settlement expansion could deepen those tensions and make an already fragile political situation even harder to reverse. And that is why E-1 matters beyond its relatively small size. The project is not simply about a few kilometers of land. It is about the future geography of the West Bank. It is about whether Palestinian communities can remain territorially connected. It is about the future status of Jerusalem And ultimately, it is about whether a two-state solution remains geographically possible. For years, Western governments have officially supported the idea of two states living side by side in peace and security. But settlement expansion has repeatedly tested that position. Now, 7 Western nations are sending a coordinated warning to Israel that the E-1 project could take the region even further away from that objective. The question is what happens next. Will Israel reconsider the tenders? Will private companies respond to the Western warning? Or will construction plans move forward despite the international opposition? For now, E-1 has once again become a major diplomatic flashpoint. And the latest dispute shows just how difficult the question of territory, settlements, and a future Palestinian state remains. Because on the map, E-1 may look like a small corridor, but politically, it could have consequences far beyond its borders.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.